Welcome to the Sharp Way Show. So happy to have you here with me this evening, a little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And we are here yapping away as we always do. And I have what I think is a kind of niche conversation. I tend to have niche conversations. I was talking about like the carnivore diet last week. So I do kind of have niche conversations. But this one is niche, not in someone else's world, but niche in my world. So yes, it is a question about how people see the Libertarian Party. And this happened not because I decided to do this, but a lot of people who view the show were talking online and they were like, you got to get this guy Joshua Eakle on. So I said, okay, fine. I don't mind. I'll put him on. Let's have a conversation. So let me do that if I can. I'm going to bring on, he is the co-founder of Project Liberal. He is a marketing specialist. He's a libertarian activist. He is the man himself, Joshua Eakle. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Larry. As I told you, I've got 2 toddlers under 2, so I'm a little tired. So if I'm laggy or, not coherent, I'm going to blame that. But thank you for having me.
I love that. So now you can screw up as much as you want and say it's the kids' fault.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to keep saying that until they turn 18.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah, that's good. So by the way, if you want to see what he is doing, you can check him out at projectliberal.org if you like, or also check out his links. I put them all in the Facebook page and also on the YouTube page in the descriptions. So Joshua, I think for people who either are now in the Libertarian Party or have been or have some connection in some way, it is both a good and a bad time. Good time in that more people are thinking duopoly sucks than ever. I mean, it's clear. We have like 5 other people running for president, right? Crazy.
Yep.
So that's something. But bad in that they didn't run to us, right? And obviously I'm biased. I wish they'd all run to us, but they didn't, right? And so what's going on? What's your view on this?
I think that you're dead correct. Like right now in American politics, we are seeing a historic cry out for an alternative. Unlike any time you've been doing this for about a decade, I've been doing this for about a decade. I've never seen an environment so ripe for a third party to take off and really make a splash like I have in this specific election cycle. But to your point, it's like the Libertarian Party, it feels to me, at least somebody who's watched this for so long, that they have been kind of priming themselves and getting themselves into a position for a moment like this. And I kind of feel like they've dropped the ball. Like, I don't feel like we're there. I think Libertarian candidates probably 6th or 7th right now in the running, at least of the major candidates in polling, behind people that should be no names, like, Cornel West, in a sense, like in the Green Party, those people died years ago, right? And then you've got RFK Jr., who very likely could get into the debate stage, and we're just still dealing with this environment where it doesn't feel like anyone's talking about libertarians. So, one of the things, I don't know, you've spent a lot of time talking to voters, and I'll be honest, I've not spent the same amount of time that you have face-to-face in these types of one-on-one conversations. I spend a lot of time in the niche political activism space in the sense that I talk to a lot of established libertarians that have been doing this for a while. But I do say that of the people that I talk to that are outside of our orbit, I get one of 2 reactions when I talk about libertarian with them. I either get I have no clue what that is. What is that? Or I get kind of a negative response. And now it's not always fully negative, but it typically leans negative. They have some sort of pre-established opinion about us. Maybe they read an article or saw the guy with again, I love Vermin. Maybe they saw the guy with a boon on his head, or they saw James Weeks dancing on stage in 2016, or Gary Johnson saying, what is Aleppo, 8 years ago, and that stuff stuck in their minds. But I do think the Libertarian Party has a brand problem, and I do think it has a brand problem that's gotten significantly worse in the last 18 months or so. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel the frustration. Like I'm in the same boat as somebody who I felt like this was the year. I'm seeing that not click at all. I mean, I have some theories as to why that might be, but I do agree with the prescription that something has to change.
Yeah, my worry here, right, how I see it, is that we actually weren't, what's the word I'm looking for? We didn't achieve a level of notoriety or respect yet, right? And we haven't had that Andrew Yang figure that Forward had, or RFK had his own name, right? Just the name RFK.
Yeah.
Or even in the case of the Green side, Cornel West, right? In that arena, he's a big deal in that arena.
Brand. Yep.
Correct. Yes, they all have the brand. We didn't get our brand, whatever our brand was. We didn't have, I don't know, say Justin Amash, as an example, maybe show up and go, I'm now the face.
Right.
Never, right? I think we didn't get that. I think a lot of people wanted Dave Smith to be that face.
Yeah.
Didn't get Dave Smith either. So we didn't get a person, whether that was Amash or Smith or whomever. I mean, I guess in theory, Gary Johnson kind of was that. It
was the closest I think we've had in 10 years, for sure.
That's true. Yeah. Yes. And I remember in 2016, I felt like maybe during the convention and within a couple of months before and after the convention, I felt like the party was united then. Right? I felt like we were like, all right, you know what? Gary's not perfect, but you know what? He'll do, right? We'll do it. Okay, we're good. Yeah. I felt that. I haven't felt that since then.
I haven't either. And I actually feel like we're the least united we've ever been, at least since I got involved in 2012 today, like right now in this moment. And I couldn't agree more. I think that a political party does have to have somewhat of a uniting figurehead, at least a uniting set of really clear and understood values that we all share. And a lot of those things that I think all that momentum that I think we saw riding out of 2016 has really tapered off. And I think you're right. I mean, there's stuff outside of our control that I think made that worse. Like I think 2020, COVID really threw us through a ring. The ambiguity about how, for example, this is all real niche. Like we talk about niche issues, but like the ambiguity about how we ran our convention, I think even ran some candidates off because they were unsure like what we were going to do in light of COVID. There was all that talk about hybrid versus in person. And I mean, you remember 2020 was an absolutely unprecedented time. It was a crazy time to be doing electoral politics, but we've definitely lost that momentum. And I feel like it's hard to even get people nowadays to agree on what libertarian even means. What's crazy to me about 2016, again, we're getting a real inter-party niche, is that it was at a time where people like me, people like you, I mean, Michael Heiss, Joshua Smith, these people were, at least for me and Michael Heiss, right? We find ourselves on two different sides of the movement, right? We were all kind of working the same direction with Gary, right? A lot of I remember we were all in the same party. We were all working the same direction. And since then, a lot of these activists, they've kind of gone into these different buckets and gone into these different pathways. And a lot of the times the visceral attacks that have been kind of going on within the party have just made things way worse.
I think, you're bringing up 2020 and I don't mean to be mean on 2020, but I think I kind of have to be. And I say that because I think so many people, me included, I wanted to see what Gary did explode, right? That's what I wanted. Clearly, I wasn't going to get that, but I wanted, and one of the reasons why, if you remember in 2016, I ran to be Gary Johnson's VP. And I ran to be Gary Johnson's VP because I knew Gary would leave. And I wanted to be the guy. I wanted to be what Spike Cohen has become from 2020.
Yeah.
I wanted to be for 2016, right? I wanted to do what Spike is doing. Now, Spike is doing more than Joe is, right? Spike is having much more impact. He's kind of holding a lot of us together. He's doing a lot of positive things, and he has positive press. I wanted to do that in 2016 because I knew that both Gary Johnson and Bill Weld would go away. Clearly, I lost that vote by 31 votes. I'm not counting. You are, Joshua, not me. I'm not counting 31 votes. Anyway, so I didn't win that, but I still wanted things to go well. So I thought if I ran in 2018 for governor, that things would happen. And what I found is I got virtually no support from national in 2018. A little bit, but hardly any.
Yeah.
And then I hardly got support from national in general. And then when 2020 came around, the failure was so bad, I think people said, what are we doing? The mindset was, we've squandered Gary Johnson's away. We've squandered everything away.
Right. Yeah.
We've lost everything. And I think when you have defeat after some positiveness, now everybody was pointing fingers.
Sure.
So clearly it's because Joshua's incompetent. No, it's because Larry's incompetent. No, it's because this person's incompetent, right? If only you had listened to me, then all of a sudden we would have doubled Gary Johnson's numbers, right? I think that's what everybody did, and we blamed each other. And I feel like that is the critical moment. The failure of 2020 was the critical moment when I thought the party started to collapse. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, and I think your prediction has kind of been realized. Now, I think there's still a path out of it. I think there's a lot of work that has to be done, but I do think that, without being characterized as a doomer, I think the party is in free fall collapse mode. I mean, we're seeing state parties getting disaffiliated. We're seeing state parties completely dissolve. Like just last week, we had what was it, the Minnesota LP just completely, all of it just dissolved like overnight. Everyone resigned. And we're seeing this happen over and over across the country with different state parties just kind of leaving, or I mean, in Virginia dissolved too. That has happened more times than once. And you're right. We are in what I would call a free fall death spiral in the party right now. And there's no end in sight. The reason, because we don't really have a major party candidate. And in many ways, we don't have a major candidate that's going to take us into that major status. And the reason is also, it's kind of a catch-22. I mean, they don't want to join because they see all the discord, right? So it's going to be very hard to break ourselves out of it. So this was actually the reason why I started Project Liberals, because I think that the movement itself, the party itself, needs a real radical change in its approach. And it needs to really rethink what its values are, what it stands for. And it needs to reinvent itself and transform itself into something that can be viable for the next 50 years. I think I personally have a nightmare that 2016 was our high watermark as a party. That is a nightmare for me, because as a young person, 18, I've never voted for any presidential candidate other than a libertarian my entire life, like ever since I was 18. And to think that we could be in a situation in 2024 where we can't even get on the ballot in 50 states and we can't even put a candidate on that really causes me a lot of frustration. It's actually emotionally troubling for me. And I'm sure you probably have a similar reaction. So I think you're dead right. Now we could point fingers as to who did it and who, what. I think the current leadership, so I think you're right. Like the previous leadership that was before 2022 did drop the ball in a lot of ways. And I think the way that they treated your campaign in 2020 or in 2018 might be a great example. I don't know about all the nuance. Because I will say, just speaking from the outside, your 2018 campaign for me was like extremely inspiring to watch. But there have been just some crazy things happen since 2022. And I think, with the current leadership almost overtly saying to people like myself and people that I would say have classical liberal values that we don't want you in the party, we want you to get out. And in a lot of ways, turning its back on the values that inspired me to be an activist, the things that inspired me to get involved in 2012 and 2016. And so that's, that whole macro environment is the reason why I think we need to rethink what we're doing and really kind of take a step back and say, what are our values? What do we really believe? And then put together a strategy to go forward. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with Project Liberal, which I think is part of the reason why we're here.
Well, I think, I'll give you my view from personal experience. And I think a larger organization that's been around a lot longer, and that's the U.S. Marine Corps. The U.S. Marine Corps after the Vietnam War was a broken organization. It was full, I'm not joking, anyone who was in it knows, it was full of drug addicts. It was full of broken people. It was a broken organization. It was in a lot of trouble. Drug abuse was one of the biggest things that came back out of Marines from Vietnam. They were throwing people out left and right. It was a horrible thing. I joined the Marine Corps in the 80s. So when I joined in the early 80s, the Marine Corps was repairing itself. That makes any sense, right? Sure. Most of my senior leadership was Vietnam veterans, and we were repairing ourselves, right, from that thing. I think that all organizations that have enough history and enough background can repair itself, right? Yeah. I was part of that repair, even though I wasn't in Vietnam, right? I didn't fight in the Vietnam War. I was too young. I was in the Vietnam War, but I came at the after when things were beginning to get repaired, and we had to go through a lot of stuff. When I was in the Marine Corps, when we first started doing direct deposit, right? We used to still get paid in cash when I first got the Marine Corps, checks, right? Yeah. So we actually that was a big change for people to get direct deposit, but we dealt with it. And I think the Marine Corps is an example of if you have a culture that is broken, you can repair it without destroying the organization, right? I think you can do it.
Absolutely.
And I feel the party can do it too. I don't think the party has to be destroyed. I know some people tell me, Larry, it's got to blow up. There's no way it's got to be built back from the ground up. I don't think so. My view is it can be built up. I believe it can.
So I agree with you with some conditions. So let me, your audience probably very well aware of this, and this is getting into the little niche nuance of the inter-party drama. But one of the things, there's a reason why I say we have to return to our values, is one of the things that I do not, that is basically like an immovable object. If this object is not moved, we will not be able to reform it and fix the party, is many of the people that are in leadership or positions where they can control the LP's brand, that overtly reject libertarian ideas. So, you know, everyone has heard it. Well, everyone in the liberty movement, I'm sure, has heard about the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. They just made national news telling Nina Turner, an African-American, to go back to Africa. You know, they've called to end women's right to vote. They've cozied up with anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and stuff. I mean, there's lncexposed.com has got a list of every single crazy thing that this brand has done. In many ways, because they are a recognized party, right? And they represent the brand and they carry the banner, right? They're the one, like if you go look up Libertarian Party, they're still there doing it, right? And they're recognized as a state affiliate. If those people, it's almost like if, you know, if the Democratic Party said they care about, you know, it's just hypothetical. Like the Democratic Party cares about the minority groups, and then they want to have a Nazi.
Maybe they say like their president candidate will say something like, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black."
Exactly
like that.
my point. Sure, that's a great
like
example. Yeah, that's a great example. There's a mismatch there. It also makes it, you know, at least with the Libertarian Party, we've got a very different environment than in the Democrats or the Republicans. We have a highly engaged core activist base of people that care very deeply about the ideas, and they give their personal checkbook to make sure the party works. I'm one of those people. You're one of those people who probably donated tens of thousands throughout the last decade in time and money to help to grow the party. For me, and many,
I'm a lifetime member. I've wrote the big check. I have.
Yes, yeah. So for me and many people in the classical liberal movement, if I want to go tell my mom to be a libertarian, it's important that I could take ownership of those values. And so I see the situation with New Hampshire as a great example of one of those things that's an immovable object. If the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire continues to be unchecked, recognized as a major party, while they say, while they call LGBTQ people groomers and they spread anti-Semitic stuff and they do the 14 words. And I mean, I could literally spend the entire show talking about all the crazy unlibertarian things they've done.
But
it's going to be very hard to build.
Say what? Let me cover 2 parts of that.
Yeah.
Number one, I cover my state every year. I travel those states all the time. I talk about libertarianism all the time. I bring a gazillion guests on from all different walks of life. They all know I'm libertarian. I'm very cozy with other parties. I'm cozy with the Constitution Party, Forward Party, I'm all of them. None of them know about any of that.
No, absolutely. And this is why I say it's the difference.
Care about any of that.
Sure. So this is why I say it's the difference between why the Libertarian Party is a uniquely different organism. So the Libertarian Party, as you know, is a very member-driven, or at least has been a very member-driven organization. There have been, 20,000 year members, close to the peak before the Mises Caucus took over. Those are people of the lifeblood of the organization. Those people care, like you and I, deeply about libertarian ideas and libertarian values. They carry the brand in their personal communities. Like they run for governor, they run for city council. When I was state chair of Tennessee, I talked to basically everyone about libertarianism all the time.
I still wear my Larry Sharpe shirts out in my neighborhood.
Exactly. I had a libertarian lapel pin, and every time I went to a GOP meeting, it was a great little talking point, right? So there was all those opportunities. 40% of the membership have stepped away from the party, not even just because of Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, but because of things that you've heard from, like the Libertarian Party of Nevada or Libertarian Party of Georgia. The leadership of the party have said membership leaving is like taking out the trash. There have been some, again, I didn't want to spend any of this time talking about all the examples because I think everyone knows.
I want to go to my second spot though.
Yeah.
So the first part is that nobody really knows. And if we didn't magnify it, maybe less people would know. But I'll give you my other example that I'll give, which was in 2017, when the then chair, Arvin Vohra, said
I remember this.
that
yes.
all veterans were murderers.
Yep.
He said it openly. He was the vice chair of the party, said it publicly.
Yep.
I didn't blast it on anything. I went in person and said, dude, do you really mean this? Is this a mistake? Did I miss something? What's going on? He doubled down. Nope, absolutely believe it. All murderers.
Yep.
Then I said, hey, look, I get where you're coming from, but even if you go down that road, we don't all kill people. Well, then you're all accessories to murder. He tripled down.
I remember this so much. Actually, sorry, go for it.
I want to keep going if I can tell a story. So then I said, look, I don't want to publicly do it. All I'm going to say is, look, I was on the LNC at the time. And so I said to him, I said, look, you have every right to have that opinion, but you can't say that as vice chair publicly. So either just step down as vice chair and have that opinion, no worries, or retract that in some way, right? One of the two, right? And you might go, well, he has right to freedom of speech. He does. But if you are the chair of Pepsi or on their board, you may not disparage Pepsi to be on their board. It is a voluntary position.
Right.
So if you hate Pepsi, no worries. You either can't say it when you're on the board or get off the board. And that was my point. As you know, there are many veterans who are in our movement. That was my opinion.
Yes.
He said, no, I'm not stepping down. Go to hell. They're all murderers. So I then moved officially to have him removed. That was me. I did it. I moved to have him removed, saying, look, he doesn't want to stop down. I asked him, I had conversations. I want him to step down. By the way, I didn't publicly do any of this stuff. I just said it internally. So, of course, it was a vote. And the vote was 50-50. And you know who broke that vote to keep him there?
I don't want to guess. I remember the Arvin Vohra fallout at the convention, but it was only at the convention, which was after this.
It was the one man himself, Nick Sarwark.
Not surprised. Understood.
He voted to keep him on.
I remember
at that point I realized that the LNC, to your point, literally was okay with calling me and my brothers murderers publicly. That was a direct attack on me and the people I knew had literally killed themselves. Direct attack on me.
I remember this statement that he made. That was one of many crazy statements that he had made. Because I feel like he had made some similar attacks.
He made those on school.
Yeah.
It was about killing teachers or something.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, and there was some stuff that was even worse that I probably wouldn't want to mention because it might flag your YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
That I
They
remember.
were terrible things.
Yep.
But I did not leave the party. I still donated. What I did was I stepped off of the LNC with a very polite note. I just had a polite note. I walked away, never up again. And people tried. Oh my God, they tried to get me to yell at Arvin, call him names, blah, blah, blah. Reason try to get me to have a whole thing so they could do a hit piece on everybody. I wouldn't do it. In fact, I said something, people were angry. I said, as mad as Arvin has made me, if he were running for Senate, and he was running for Senate at the time, in my state, and it was him versus Democrat Republican, I would still vote for him because he's still better than the duopoly, even though he said what he said, even though he insulted me. I would still vote for him. And I meant that. I said it then, and I still meant it because breaking the system is more important than a personal insult, no matter how horrible it is. So I still said that.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
So I still did it.
Yep.
So my point is, and then I went and run for governor and raised $5 million.
Sure.
And still stayed in the party. I'm still part of the party. So I get why people have left. I understand it. All I'm saying is, I don't think people should have left the party. I think they should have just stayed in the party and just, if you don't like what Mises is doing, I think you should organize to get rid of them.
I agree with that. So let me give you my side of the story on that one, or at least what I remember, because actually that was the first year. I remember I met you at the NOLA convention. Arvin Vohra is the reason that I went to my first LNC convention, was because I had a similar reaction to you. I was absolutely disgusted with the guy. He had, I remember spending time organizing to try to get delegates to show up in Tennessee under the sole purpose of getting Alex Merced elected as the vice chair, right? And
by the way, hold on one second.
Yes.
I went and got him to get rid of Arvin Vohra.
Amazing.
I recruited him.
Alex Merced is a gem, in my opinion. He's truly a gem.
From New York. I literally said, and to my point, what I said you should organize, I did that. I organized to get rid of Arvin Vohra. I went and got Alex. I'm saying in public, Alex would tell you, I recruited him and I backed him and I trained him so he could win that election. That is correct. That was me. I actually did that. I also was trying to get rid of Nick Sarwark at the time. And I was trying to get Alicia Dern to do it. She actually couldn't do it. She dropped out.
That was an interesting convention in 2018. Well, I guess where your point is, I agree with you. You need to show up and you need to organize people and you need to go in and make a difference. That's actually the whole purpose of what we're trying to do with Project Liberal. I'll get to that in a minute. But I will say one qualifying statement before I move on to the Go For It plan, because I do agree with you. Like the reason I'm still in the Libertarian Party and the reason why I still have left myself after seeing a lot of the things that I consider to be repugnant and despicable coming from the current leadership and state parties is because exactly that. I think I needed, well, it's not even me, but like the people in the classical liberal movement need to say, we're going to show up and we're going to have our voice heard. and we're going to speak out against this, and we're going to be truthful. We're going to organize and at least give it one more shot. So I do see 2024 as that opportunity. But I will say there is a big difference. There are some things that Arvin did say that were pretty insane. But I mean, we are talking about the difference between somebody like Arvin, who took LP messaging to an extreme, right? And in many cases, what I see from current leadership in state parties and our current leadership, where they are rejecting libertarian principles. And so now I agree with you on principle. Like, we need to show up and we need to put up a fight. That's completely agreed with. That's why we started Project Liberal. You can go to projectliberal.org and check out Project Phoenix. And that's literally what we're trying to do. But there is a really radical difference between having people in leadership that just reject libertarian ideas outright, and somebody in libertarian leadership that says some things that are extreme. So that's where I would say the emotions might feel a lot stronger right now because of that. And that's where I come from, because when I see state parties telling people to go back to Africa, or saying that my friends, who adopt, if I got two gay friends that adopt a kid, they're grooming that. Like, that's a crazy idea. Like, that's something I'd expect to see from MAGA, not from libertarians. Libertarians were the first party to stand up for LGBTQ rights, right? So
let me grab, if I could, a couple of super chats real fast.
Yeah, go for it.
The Fountainhead Forum, thanks for the $5. He says, I've done 27 shows about Javier Milei because I want to learn as much as they possibly about why he has won. If you want to win, study winners. A little bit off topic, but it's $5. So thank you for the topic. I appreciate it. Yes, I agree. I have done a show on Javier, and my advice for those who want to take it or not is to give him at least 6 months of grace. Yeah, because he will have to work, and he is in a different world. And please don't, when he makes one mistake, start calling him out and yelling and screaming. Give him some grace to see what he can do. That's my view. I know, Joshua, you want to say?
No, I agree with that. Javier Milei actually was, as you probably, I think you might have mentioned in the intro, I do a lot of work with Students for Liberty. I run marketing for them. And I'm here with my Project Liberal hat on right now, not my Students for Liberty hat. But, Students for Liberty in Argentina, have had him at his events and met with him. He seems to be a very classical liberal guy with a lot of very true libertarian impulses. But you never know with South America. They might, wait 6 months. He might be throwing people out of helicopters. I hope not. Yes. But I want to wait and see what he does. So
exactly. And let's say he does something authoritarian, but he does like 9 libertarian things. Give him a break. He might have to, or he literally might not be alive the next day. So there are certain things that he might need to do just so he can stay above ground, is all I'm saying. So give him a little bit of grace. It is South America. People do have accidents all the time. So it's true. Just saying. So Travis, thank you for $19.99. I appreciate that. This, I think, one is for you. He says, the liberal project cannot improve the brand of the party. It is not radical, too similar to the brand of another party. Only one state was dissolved and disaffiliated. This is why we can't work together. Intellectual dishonesty. So I think Travis is trying to say that your movement is too, I guess, milquetoast, not radical enough, I think is what he's saying.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
If I understand him right. And he said that only one state was dissolved. That's what he's saying.
I wish that was true, but it's not. I mean, we know that we had the Libertarian Party of New Mexico was disaffiliated. Libertarian Party of Michigan is currently involved in litigation. We had a party dissolve in Minnesota, and that's just 3 from off the top of my head. Massachusetts formed a splinter group. Virginia dissolved. Oh my goodness. Pennsylvania fractured. So there've been, like, we could talk about maybe very specific example. Every single one of these states have a different story as to what happened, but it's usually the same core group of like dedicated activists. At some point in the last 18 months, they said enough is enough, and they did something. They started a new party and left, dissolved, whatever. Or some of them are getting sued by the LNC, which is a whole nother conversation. So I would say that that's actually underplaying the severity of the problem. But that's a whole nother thing. So to the commentary on the Liberal Party, or not the Liberal Party, but the liberal movement, which I think is a better way to put it, I think that it's the exact opposite of milquetoast. And the reason I say that is because classical liberals are standing up and radically different from libertarian ideas. They're taking libertarian ideas and applying them in a way that I have never seen such organic growth potential. So my co-founder and I have been running these pages, right? So we started Project Liberal about a year ago. And we're reaching near 10 million people a month on this channel with these messaging. And one of the things I'm finding that's very compelling about this, to the point that we talked about at the very beginning, is when you talk to somebody about what would be considered, Larry, traditional libertarian ideas. So things like, again, standing up for the rights of everyone, no matter where they, what their religious or sexual orientation are. The idea of free trade, right? Embracing capitalism, free trade, breaking down tariffs, being optimistic and looking forward as to like, how can we fix things and build better institutions and better systems? You did a phenomenal job of articulating the way that libertarian values are applied in real life during your campaign. And I wasn't a doomer. Oh, we're all screwed. We need to just break down everything and go back to monarchies and what. It was a forward-looking approach. You said, we're going to take these ideas and apply them to the real world, and this is what it looks like, right? So we try to do that as well. And also the idea that we stand up for democracy, and what standing up for democracy doesn't mean is standing up for the two-party system. It means standing up for real representative democracy. It means also fighting extremism. It's fighting the people that on the left that want to control what you do and how you can spend your money, and on the right, what you can say and who you can love. Like, these are things that are truly classical liberal ideas. They're radical ideas. And when you apply them to reality and you show people what they mean, and you strip away the libertarian baggage, I have seen just a massive amount of growth potential that I never thought was there. And one thing that's encouraging to me,
so hold on,
is it's all young people.
Do you think that this will translate to a year, two, whatever is the number from now, a massive influx of people to the party?
That's my hope.
Or do you not think that will happen?
So that's my hope. So maybe we could pivot then to the Operation Phoenix a little bit and talk about that. So we launched Operation Phoenix, and the goal of this is to basically find a home for classical liberals. And when I say classical liberals, the way that I frame it to the public and to young people, I just call it liberal, because the far left has completely abandoned the term. Like, listen, when I post something praising liberalism, commies and tankies hate it. They absolutely hate it. They 100%. Hate it. They hate it more than the fascists do, which is crazy to me. And then on the far right,
no, liberal is an insult if you're on the left.
Exactly. Liberal is an insult if you're on the left. Yes. And on the far right, it's the same way. They don't, it's just like, yeah, they're not anywhere close to it. Right. But it's actually more nuclear on the left because of that dynamic you mentioned, but that's a whole nother story. So my goal is to basically build a movement for the next generation. It's not 1 year, 2 years. We need to find a place, a political home for people that have liberal values. And I think liberal values, free trade, standing up for the rights of everyone, really fighting extremism, really standing up for democracy, as we talked about, like representative democracy, embracing reason, which means science, being pro-capitalism, all those things. So it means taking those ideas and building a home for those people, and then building a movement that's bigger than that political party or entity could ever be. So like our phase 1 of this project is trying to effectively co-opt that language. And we're doing it in a way that has shocked me at how receptive Gen Z and millennials have been to it. It's truly shocking to me, because I don't know if you have probably seen some of this polling. Like most Gen Z, I think it's like 80% of Gen Z considers themselves on the left. Something like 55, 60% of millennials consider themselves on the left. That's not because they're communists, Larry. That's not because they're left-wing left-wing AOC Green New Deal people. That's because they've seen and been disgusted by the rejection of like liberal values from the right. I mean, I really do believe that. It's like, if I grew up at 16, 17, 18 and my friend's gay and I see a Republican Party trying to malign them and all that. So I think it's a lot of a social issue thing. When you strip all that away and you look at the values that these people have, many of those people actually care a lot about free markets, limited government, get the hell out of my life, the same things that libertarians care about, but they can't, for some reason, come to embrace libertarian as a label because of all this baggage. Many of the baggage has been escalated in the last 18 months. Now, again, we get into the nuance of that, but so that the idea here is like, let's build a movement of those young people that care about those ideas, tell them what true liberalism really is, and then find a home for them. And that's the first phase of this project, is let's show up to the LNC convention and say, here's what needs to happen for us to actually have a home here, and then see if that works.
But there is another thought process. And it's almost like maybe it's almost like a Ron Paul Harry Brown, type of idea that you've got to be strong and aggressive, and you've got to be forward. You can't, you got to be kind of mean almost, and in your.
It helps online. It helps with engagement. Yeah.
So I think there is a side that says, if the worry is, and to be forward, I don't know if this is true, right? But the worry is, if we're not that way, they'll just go back to, their Democrat or Republican. The second that the second that Bernie comes back out, they'll go back left. The second that the Trump comes out, they'll go back right. So we're wasting our time if we don't have strength. Yeah. Do you think that's true? Not true? Am I off on this?
Okay, that's a really, really good question, actually. So let me look at it. Just take a step back and look at like the big picture as I see. There have been a lot of approaches in the last 15 years.
Yep.
I got involved in the Tea Party movement. The first effort of the Tea Party movement in 2008, 2012 was let's take over the Republican Party.
I remember.
They did a good job in some ways. I mean, they got some good people elected. There were some really great people elected that are still elected. Some of them are still elected. But they didn't effectively do that. I mean, in 2016, all of that work was completely unraveled. I mean, the Republican Party rejected libertarian ideas. That's the reason why we're all in the Libertarian Party, or you and I are, is because they completely rejected that in 2016. And so that was the first major strategy that happened. I think Gary's strategy of kind of going to the rational centrist voter did actually show some voter success, but it didn't translate into necessarily like membership growth. I mean, it did, but it didn't translate into serious membership growth. Like actually Joe Jorgensen, Spikes Cohen, be strong, true to your values and stick with those values and focus on a membership approach actually did result in more membership than Gary did, at least if you compare apples to apples. But one of the strategies that happened after that, which was the strategy that the Mises Caucus has supposedly implemented, was let's return to the Ron Paul. And that's at least what they say. It's like, we're going to return to the Ron Paul messaging. We're going to go extreme. I don't think they've done that. I actually think they've, I'm not saying all of them have, because I know many Mises Caucus people like that I have a lot of respect for, but I think they've completely allowed themselves to be co-opted by right-wing extremists, anti-Semites, and people that are like flirt with fascism. And I don't mean that hyperbolically. I mean like calling for us to throw homeless people in prison and calling gay people groomers. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that that have been part of that movement that I think have been an overt rejection of those values. But let's just say that they were that has failed too. I mean, 40% membership collapse, we're going to not have ballot access 50 states. We've lost, the revenue is at historic lows. So the party has not succeeded. Mm-hmm. I think that no matter what, we've got to think about something new. We've got to go try a different approach because all these approaches haven't succeeded.
Let me talk to my audience for just a couple of seconds. Guys, if you like what you're seeing, do me a favor, click that like button. If you think it's the right answer, click the like button. It does matter. If you're watching on Twitter, please retweet this right now. It does matter. Every retweet does matter if you can. So please retweet, click the like button, subscribe, do all the cool things that are important so we can keep going forward. I also want to grab, we have a bunch of comments. Let me grab a little bit of super chats here. Travis goes on again. Travis, thank you for 1999. Has Josh not pledged to create another party if he doesn't get his way? The LPMC, those who know, is the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, pledged to keep working for and in the party for true libertarian principles and issues, not primitive, classic liberal ones. So are you considering making a party that doesn't work? Do you think there's a future Libertarian Party, or how do you answer this question?
Yeah, that's a great question from Travis. So I haven't pledged to make a new party, no. But what I have said, and this is one of the things that you can see if you go to projectliberal.org and go to our Operation Phoenix, you'll see it on the website. We have said that if the party continues to embrace illiberal values, so if the party refuses to disaffiliate New Hampshire, if the party refuses to endorse a candidate that actually represents libertarian ideas, if the party doesn't change over leadership, because I do believe, there's nuance, I'm sure, I feel like they've absolutely failed at their job of growing membership, growing revenue, growing ballot access. They have failed. So if the party cannot do that, then what Project Liberal is basically pledged to do is help liberals find another home. And the reason we've said that is not because we want to go start a competing party or go do this. The idea is that I know these people. There is a large movement of classical liberals that look at the Libertarian Party right now and say, I just can't give them money. I can't tell my mom to vote for them. I don't want my mom to look up what they're saying online. And so I go to,
I feel like, though, it feels to me like this is the easiest time to do a counter takeover.
And that is exactly, so that is exactly what we're trying to do. If you go to the website, you could sign up to become a delegate. We're trying to bring as many people as possible to 2024 DC. Whether you're a delegate or not is actually irrelevant to me. I think that if you're a classical liberal and you want the Libertarian to be party to be a home for you, you should show up there and you should be vocal about that. And I am absolutely organizing people to that end. And I would tell anyone that wants to get involved to go sign up on the site, and we're going to give you opportunities to get involved. The best way to do that is show up at your state convention or show up and partner with the presidential campaign that you like. But that's absolutely right, Larry. There's a big vacuum. We don't know what could happen. I mean, there could be a really big change of leadership that happens in 2024, and it absolutely should happen based on the results of the last 2 years. So something has to change.
Travis also says, Travis, thank you for throwing so much cash. I appreciate it. We have so much cash. I'm doing it. I'm giving you the super chats. I'm doing my.
You need to have me back, Larry. I'm going to fundraise for your show.
Josh is factually incorrect on the affiliates. When the hardcore, he puts in quotes, folks he mentioned attempted to divide and dissolve on their way out, the affiliates persisted. So I think what Travis is saying, if I read him correctly, he's saying that when the bad people, I think in his view, tried to break up the parties, the affiliates stayed, those people left. And he's saying, so they weren't disaffiliated, dissolved. Those people who are angry, they left.
I can't speak to the nuance because, as I think I said a minute ago, it is really difficult because each state has a different story. But I will say that there have been absolutely more than one party that's disaffiliated. We are in donor money right now is going to lawsuits against existing fracture groups, which again, based on the side of the faction, you say they're evils, they say they're legitimate, whatever. I mean, it's also worth noting that 10% of all the money that's being raised right now through the Libertarian National Committee is going to pay Angela McArdle's boyfriend, which is also a whole nother conversation. But this goes back to a problem that I mentioned. Right now, if you're a classical liberal and you want to look at the Libertarian Party and say, do I want to support it? It is very difficult for me to ask my mom to give the money, to ask, my friends to be involved, because I think they're in rejection of their values. So the goal is exactly what you said, Larry. Get people to show up at convention. Let's see if we can articulate a better vision for the party. Let's show that. One of the things that Project Liberal is trying to do in conjunction with our friends at the Classical Liberal Caucus is put together a list of transformative bylaw amendments that basically change the party in a way that help fix some of the structural issues that cause a lot of this discord and frustration on a regular basis, and decentralize the Libertarian National Committee so that it's more representative of those state parties. Because as we both know, the only thing that really matters is state parties. The LNC is basically just a glorified fundraising and ballot access support mechanism. That's really all it should be. And then obviously, I think, as I mentioned with Angela McArdle, we need higher ethical standards for our leadership because we've got some serious problems there too. But you got more comments or chats?
I got tons.
Oh, okay.
Chrissy Mayer, the one and only Chrissy Mayer, I adore you. She said, told my viewers to join you and say, the Eakle has landed. Nice. Eakle didn't go as planned. We love you, Larry. Actually, it did, Chrissy. It went very well. Rival Technology did $49. Thank you so much.
Oh, my God.
The Eakle has landed.
I love it
so much. So it did work. Plus, a whole bunch of people actually did do the Eakle has landed. Here is 1. Here is 2. Here is 3. Here is 4. Here is 5. Here is 6. Here is 7. Here is 8. Chuck says the beagle is pooped. Almost there. He got close. Another one. Another one. Another one. So it is. I'm still going. Yes. So,
wow.
Yes.
I think we've got a new catchphrase.
So it did work. They're still going. It's not done. They're still going. So Chrissy, you are amazing. It absolutely did work. A whole bunch of the Eakle has landed did go.
Oh, Lord.
There's still more of them. 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 So yes, there were a whole lot of Eakle have landed. I do appreciate it. So yes. But Forest Mommy has an important question for you. She says, after he takes over the actual activism, or what actual activism will he do? So I guess the question is, if my always thought process was, and maybe I am too cynical here.
Yeah.
I always thought that no matter who takes over, it's going to fail. That's kind of what I thought, because this is just hard to run. We don't have enough cash. People aren't being paid. It's volunteers. People are angry. They have their own issues. We have all types of internal baggage. You know, no matter who takes over, there's going to be problems. But maybe I'm just too cynical. If your faction or group of people, however you would say that, do take over, if that's true, I think her question is a valid one. What do you think will happen? What is your view?
So, okay. So yeah, to be clear, I don't have any intention to take over anything. And when I go into convention, the only thing I want to see are the 5 things that we articulated in the Project Liberal plan. The first thing is disaffiliating Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, passing bylaw amendments, and then actually nominating somebody that embraces classical liberal ideas. So just to make that clear, I don't hate myself enough to ever run for any position in the LNC. I'm sure you understand what I mean by that.
I do completely.
So I will say that and this may actually speak to a disagreement between many of the people in the Mises caucus and many of the people that might find themselves on more of like the CLC or classical liberal side. Is I don't see the party as a vehicle for activism at all. The party,
okay.
Many of the people in the party do activism on their own time. As you know, I work for a 501c3 that trains and educates young people across the world on libertarian and classical liberal ideas, try to give them the tools that they need to go do activism. You could start a 501c4 and have a much better tax structure to do activism, right? You get to accept unlimited money to do activism. You could start a variety of different types of organizations. So I actually see the sole purpose of a political party is to build coalitions and get people elected. And it is kind of funny to me that a party that prides itself on such, what's the word here, principles, values, has been the most successful third party in the country. It's kind of an oxymoron because in a way, in order to build a successful political party, you have to make concessions and you have to build coalitions. And a lot of the times that's very difficult, as we all know on this chat and on this, that's a very hard thing to do if you're operating from a very solely principle only stance. So it's not to say
I completely agree.
Yeah, and that's not to say you shouldn't abandon your principles, because as I think I mentioned to you, there are hard lines, and there's many of the hard lines we've discussed on this chat. There should be hard lines on your principles. There's things you should never compromise on. But in order to build a political party that succeeds, you need to be electing candidates and you need to be building coalitions with people that may only agree with you like 60, 70% of the time. So to answer the question, activism is a great thing to do. I would recommend you do it. Don't do it in a political party. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. If you're in a political party, focus on getting candidates elected. When I was state chair of Libertarian Party of Tennessee, we got nearly 10 people elected to local office. I think one of the things that I do applaud the Mises Caucus for doing is focusing on those winnable races. They've really mentioned their desire to do that. I don't think they've done as well as previous administrations, but that's a whole other conversation. But they have focus on that. That is something that should happen. We need to get more people in positions where they can make decisions that share our values, and that's what a political party exists to do. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I tried. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Ryan says, I like you, Larry, a lot. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. But I'm really concerned about having a frequently disingenuous critic of the party on to discuss how people view the LP. Well, I think this is kind of towards me. I want everyone to be on. I'm not afraid of critiques of the party or the movement or myself even. People who've watched this show know when people insult me, I actually put them on. I let people talk and say what they want. I try to be good to my guests. I try not to be very rude to them as I try not to be. But I think that we do want to have the conversation. I'm not concerned at all, Ryan. Even if, I don't know, if he would have come in and go, Libertarian Party sucks, it's terrible, blow it up, whatever. I mean, he didn't say that. But even if he did, he has a right to think that, and we should talk about it. So that's where I am. I don't know. Am I off on this, Joshua?
No, I appreciate you you doing that. I do think we need to be, like, if we're going to fix a lot of the inter-party division, we should have conversations. I try to be as factual as possible. And I know I mentioned this earlier, but if you want to go to lncexposed.com, the receipts that I'm mentioning, they're all there. Like, there was somebody that put together a website. They are all there. So I don't know. Disingenuous. I try to do is rely on factual statements. I don't try to make things up.
So let me Ryan challenge you, right? Ryan then goes on to say, at least I'd be interested in his answers to questions like, can you name 3 things that you think the current leadership of the party has been doing well? You did mention one. You said focusing on winnable races. Yep. So that is one you did without being asked. So Ryan, I'm only going to ask him to do 2 more. So can you do 2 more to make Ryan happy? Or maybe not.
I think that the renewed focus on winnable races is good. You know, I will say that whether it's lip service or not, I do think that, as you mentioned, many people that were involved in the Mises movement that made it possible for Mises to win saw a rejection of libertarian ideas right before they were even elected. And so I think that, again, I see it as lip service because I don't think they've acted on this, but I do think that a focus, at least if only from a messaging perspective, to say we need to be true to our values, that is something that is worth. That is something that's worthwhile. And I think that was something that, and I consider myself, that's two. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot for the third. I think they've gotten some good Twitter engagement, Larry.
That's absolutely true. That is totally accurate.
They've gotten some viral memes. Let's throw that out there. They have done that.
There we go. Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
You do have someone who is the opposite. He says, Ryan is big mad that anyone would dare point out that the MC is costing the LP donations and membership with its GOP-like garbage messaging. And it's funny that, in both cases, the one guy who was Travis, who was upset with you, he was saying that you weren't radical enough. And then Nice Dream is kind of saying that the Mises Caucus is kind of GOP light.
Yeah.
So it's funny how each side kind of sees the other as kind of
in our movement. That's like an attack. It's like you're not radical enough. I genuinely do. I feel like I'm a pretty radical person. Like when I look at the way that my worldview is compared to the two major parties, I see myself as radical. And I think we talked about this earlier. I want to build a movement of people that are radical and excited about liberal values because they are under attack by both major extremes. So, the only difference I think is in tactics. So I think that there is a time to try to build coalitions, and you need to be able to do that to win in politics. And sometimes that means not pulling an Arvin Vohra, as you mentioned, and saying, well, it might be true in principle that veterans are murderers or whatever, right? It might be true if you look at there is a time and a place to have that conversation, and understanding that is something, sadly, that libertarians have a difficult time doing. Larry, I'll leave it up to your audience to figure out why that is.
I get what you're saying completely. Let me grab another super chat if I can. 99, thank you, the lunatic libertarian. Human being should be the only label, title, category to argue. Not all this fractured thinking. Start participating in the systems that oppress you. Most libertarians have no backbone. And this is an issue that I think people are worried about. And it's because, and I get what he's saying.
I do too.
Because so often when we get pushed, we don't stand where maybe we should stand, if that makes sense, because we're trying to make a coalition, which there is a difference though here. I want to be clear on this.
Yeah.
One of them is people got mad at me when I brought Andrew Yang to Freedom Fest. They were like, why didn't you attack him on his 2A, his Second Amendment? He's bad on guns or whatever, right? And I was like, because I'm trying to create a single issue coalition. The issue that the Forward Party and Libertarian Party agree on completely is electoral reform. We both want electoral reform. So if you notice, whenever I'm with the Forward Party candidate, what do I talk about? Electoral reform. So I don't bring up the other issues that we disagree upon. And some people, I think, to his point, will, because we have had milquetoast libertarians in the past, now think I'm somehow not being true to my libertarianism.
Right.
When I'm not, I'm just not. If someone had asked me when I'm on stage, hey, what do you think about the Second Amendment? I wouldn't have gone, well, no, take all the guns. Right? I wouldn't have done that. I would have been like, no, Second Amendment's important. It's valid. I would have gone through the entire spiel I always go through. But I'm not going to do that in front of somebody who I know is going to argue with me when I'm trying to make a single issue coalition. I've actually have coalitions actually in the past with people in New York State with the LaRouche group. People say, well, LaRouche is terrible. We don't like LaRouche. I'm talking about one thing when I'm with them: anti-war. That's it. When it comes to anti-war, we're together. So I'll make a connection with them on anti-war. If you ever see me with anyone like that, I'm always there talking about anti-war. That's what I talk about. I don't discuss other things. We don't always agree on other things. So I think there is a problem or an issue that we have when we see someone who is in front of an audience and they're not actively pushing every single issue or fighting on everything in single issue coalitions. Am I off on this?
Yeah, no, there's two things that I would say to that. And what he does raise a good point. The first thing is, and this is me just talking as somebody who works in marketing communications. We are evolved monkeys. We are very tribal. We are very primitive in the way our brains work. We are looking for a tribe and a group, and what that has turned into in the digital era is a title. It's a descriptor. Are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat? Are you a Libertarian? Whatever. We latch onto those things and we take those the identity that are built with those brands and we make them our identity. So it would be amazing if we were Spock-like robot AI crazy people that just were like, no, we're all human beings and we're going to talk about the one issue and we're going to go back and forth. Like, that would be amazing, but that's not who we are. So from a communications and a growth perspective, if you want to build a political movement, you need to choose a label and then articulate what that label means and then give people a reason to want to associate with it. That's what works. So it's not a conversation about whether I like it. It's more of a conversation about whether it is a viable strategy to achieve the results that we all on this video in your audience and you and I want to see achieved in the world. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, to your point, I agree with you, but with like a little asterisk. So I think that there is a time where you need to make single issue partnerships. But there also comes a time where those single issue partnerships could hurt you in a real way. So like, I agree. The Andrew Yang thing makes sense. I think Andrew Yang, at least on the side of fighting for representative democracy, has done so many things. Libertarians should be like, hey, you're raising awareness on the broken system. So that's great. But when we're talking about, like, I wouldn't want to have, go extreme. I wouldn't want to have like Hitler or Stalin on a stage with me, because the benefits outweigh the cons. The values are truly in complete contrast. So sure, Stalin might want freer markets for one industry, but I'm not going to partner with him, right? So I think that you're right. There needs to be a line. It's a little bit gray. For me, I kind of draw the line of like, how do you feel about individual liberty? I feel like Andrew Yang's got some broad agreement there. I'm looking at overlap Venn diagrams. He probably got 80%. But if you're like, hey, we need to throw people in camps or throw people in prison because they love the wrong person or they, believe the wrong religion, that's when I start to be a little bit less hesitant, a little bit more hesitant.
Pete says, we do not run popular candidates, suck at raising money, and scare outsiders away. Pete, you're not wrong. These are a lot of things that are true. I am trying my best to change that. If you notice, having a libertarian on my show is actually not a common thing. Usually I have non-libertarians on, right? Because I'm trying to bring people in. I don't want to scare outsiders away. I'm trying to bring them in. And I do like raising money. So that's one thing I do. But the popular candidate thing, that one I can't get around, Pete. I'm trying. They won't come.
Gary Johnson, as we said, did something, but it was not enough.
Yes,
hey, Mark, there we go. Speak of Gary.
Mark says it. Agreed. Gary Johnson brought me into the party.
Yep.
So yes, I think that's true. Gary Johnson was very popular with many people. The lunatic libertarian says, Andrew Yang, he is a clown. Well, whether he is a clown or not, the guy has raised more money than we have last year.
Yep.
And has made more impact than we have last year, and was good enough to come to Freedom Fest and talk directly with libertarians and have conversations. And he mentioned libertarians during his campaign many times, and we rarely get mentioned.
Yeah, Ford Party, and his Ford Party really does want to build coalitions with libertarians. We can't give them not credit for that. While they don't agree with us on everything, they really do want to try to do what they can to help libertarians out, which has been surprising to me how much they've put out the olive branch. So.
Yes, I think that. And of course, Joel says the most important thing, you're not a real libertarian, which of course is what we all have to say. Yes.
That happened at least once tonight.
But the lunatic libertarian also says Michael House is a clown. So I guess they're both clowns then. Fair, at least you're being fair to everyone. But I will give Heiss credit where credit is due. He was able to organize a ton of people to come in and get his takeover. He said he was going to take over, and he did it. I give credit where credit is due, whether you like Michael or not. The guy had a goal, and he made it happen.
Now in 24, he's got to stand on his record, and I think that's the key here: is did he achieve what he said he was going to achieve? And at this point, I don't think that happened. So that's where we disagree.
There we go.
Yeah,
there we go. So yes, Jericho says there's a lot of infighting within the party, and we need to get some folks with money on board. Yes, and yes. Hate that it has to be that way, but we can't compete with the RNC, DNC to get campaign recognition. This is the piece I talk about all the time. We have to raise money, but raising money is hard. we have to bring new people in to raise money. We have to show there's some value to raise money. And that can be challenging. And I know there's a group of libertarians who believe that if we are just principled, the money will come. And I think we have seen that's not the case. Doesn't mean we can't be principled.
Yeah.
But I think messaging and principled, you have to meld them somehow.
Well, and viability, right? And also like ethical behavior, and it's a systems thing. So we talked about 2020, right? I think arguably one of the reasons why we didn't get any major candidates was because of the kind of whole transition to the 2020 convention was fudged. It was dropped. So you need to have an organization that runs well, that messages well, that is viable. If you get those three things together, it's a lot easier to fundraise. Still difficult for libertarians, but it's a lot easier than if you're missing one of those three components.
Yeah, agreed. Missy goes on to say, Gary Johnson brought me into libertarianism and the LP. So Gary Johnson is popular today. So I guess that's a good thing. Yes. Yeah. Joe says, Gary Johnson was a great bridge from non-L's libertarianism. Yes. However, there's a big however in this, Joe. You're correct. My worry is that we didn't pick up the ball, right? I love what Gary did. Happy he did it. But we weren't there to go, I got this now. Come on, let's go. We didn't have the next step available. We didn't have it. We weren't prepared for that next step. And I wish we were. I wish we had had someone like a Spike Cohen, who was there to say, I'm next. Stay excited, right? I'm next. Yeah. Stay excited. I'm right here. Stay excited. And we didn't have that. So I think, yes. And I think we missed a thing there. I do think we did.
Yeah, I don't disagree. As I think we mentioned earlier, in 2020, the handoff from like membership growth was there were a lot more members, like long-term members that were made out of the Spike JoJo campaign than for the Gary campaign. It speaks to what we talked about earlier. You got to have a competent and viable system. You got to have people in place in leadership that know what they're doing and are ready to capitalize on that. Hopefully we can build that infrastructure in 24, even if it's small, because we are hemorrhaging members right now. So there's a lot of change that needs to happen. But
well, Scott, he's not a Joe Jorgensen fan. He says Joe Jorgensen was a disaster. He is not a fan.
I mean, he didn't get as many votes as Gary did, I guess.
Well, yeah, I think if you compare her to Gary, I think he's right when you make that comparison. So that may not be fair to Joe. I don't know if it is or not, but I'm just saying, I think it's true. If you look at that, yeah, I mean, everybody wanted her to double what he did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And she halved it. So that does not come out well when we have that, that's that piece that we want, right? Yeah. We wanted it. We didn't get it. I think that's true. Shelley says, wasn't there a guy who identified as libertarian and jumped ship when he didn't win? This seems to be going on within the party. That happens a lot. There's not a guy. There are many people who run once and then you never see him again. And I think that's one of our hardest things. Here's the glory, I think, right now. And you tell me if I'm wrong here, Josh. There's a big advantage to the Libertarian Party right now. And that is we've never really had elder statesmen, people who have run and didn't leave, people who have run and stayed active, particularly nationally and in the media, right? We might have somebody locally who's done it, right? We've had a lot of those local people who've done it, but I mean national figures. Now we have people who are involved. Now we have, particularly Spike is a perfect example of that. He's run, he hasn't left us, he's still active, people still see him, right? These types of people, I think people are staying. I would even say Donald Rainwater, right? Active, has been staying, still runs again, right? So I think we have more of these people than we've had in the past. In the past, it was often one shot and out. I think Joe here, Joe's run like 3 times, right? Joe, who's on right now, who's watching. A lot of people, I've run twice. So I think a lot of people are doing it and staying and running. And I don't think, at least when I look at 2012, when I got involved, I don't remember much of that. Am I wrong here?
No, actually, I want to touch on something that I think is interesting, and not to get back into the factualism stuff, but I do think this is an interesting note. So what's more important, so I agree with you. It is very important that we have good candidates that stay there and are engaged a long time. I've been continually disappointed that Gary has gone to smoke weed and climb mountains. But listen, he's his own guy. He can go do that. If I was in his shoes after 2, successful presidential runs like him, I probably do the same thing, whatever, but a whole nother conversation. But what's more important, I think, than these kind of elder statesmen or these figureheads that stay around are the workers, the people that understand the systems and the staff that make everything possible. That for me has been the most devastating impact of the Mises takeover is almost all the staff turned over. People like our former executive director, Tyler Harris, or Robert Krause, who was basically he was a foundational member of the team.
I remember Robert, sure, of course.
Yeah. And I love Robert. A lot of the people that have been involved in that, those are the people I think that matter more than anything, because those are the people that make sure that membership handoff happens, that make sure the ballot access updates go out, or make sure the resources are properly allocated, make sure that we're communicating with our members and building that base and cultivating that base. That's been, I think, probably the most devastating impact of the last 18 months. And that goes back to our spiral conversation. I think the loss, that massive turnover that we saw in the last 18 months has actually caused a lot more of this membership collapse than any of the macro stuff. You and I talk about candidates, this and that. That's all secondary. It's actually been like, who's calling donors? Who's like sending out the membership cards, right? Who's doing the day-to-day? But we do need those elder statesmen. It is disappointing that we don't have them. But I think that's a challenge to step up and do it. I think you've done that, Larry. You have tried to, I know you may not see yourself this way, but I think you have been committed to the party and you've been consistently trying to build something here. There's only a few of those people I think stick around for over 10 years. So I respect and appreciate that. I think it's on us, the membership, to be those people, if that makes sense. To stick around.
No, I get it. I think we've had what the Libertarian Party has had decent activists, good activists for many years. We were raised as an activist party, right? I get that. My concern is now that we have that, we can always use more activists, right? Always you'd never have enough activists, so we can always get more. Yeah. However, I think our dearth is far more in candidates who are good candidates who learn and keep running, right? More than activists. Because I think what happens when we have good candidates, we by default draw in more, activists. I think a lot of people.
Ideally, we get somebody elected and they stick around as an incumbent, right? That's the dream. When they lose over and over again, that's when we're like, hey, what's the value proposition here? You want to just keep running to lose? That's hard, right? Yes. I think you and I talked about this at Freedom Fest when I saw you in Memphis. I mean, how much blood, sweat, and tears do you pour into a campaign? You imagine trying to do that just to keep the party running. There are people, by the way, Larry, that you have met that I know that do this. They do it for ballot access reasons. I think you've done this in many cases, but in Indiana and in California and in Texas, these people are running, knowing they might lose, but running viable, well thought through, funded campaigns because they know it has to be done in order to keep the access. Those are the people. I mean, and many times you're right. Rainwater is a good example. I love Jeff Maurer. Yeah. Jeff Maurer is a good friend of mine. He ran for Secretary of State in Indiana. These are the people that those are those elder statements, but they don't actually spend a lot of time on podcasts or on Twitter. They actually are working.
Yeah, I know. I do kind of wish Rainwater would spend more time on podcasts.
Yeah, noted.
I do. I wish he would. I mean, look, again, he's got a family. I get it. I'm not like mad at him. I'm just saying I would like him to be, because he's well-spoken. He's been around the block. He gets it, right?
And he's one of the most successful libertarian candidates in the entire history of the party.
I think he got 12% last time. Is that about right?
That's insane to me. That's absolutely insane to me. Yeah. So
in Indiana. I mean, so yeah, I wish he was on like every show in the world, but I guess he's got to like pay bills and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so yes. Mark says a major problem for the LP is it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Yeah. I think it's a valid point.
I agree.
Right. It's a valid point. We do spend a lot of time being concerned about that. Absolutely. Let me grab another super chat. Travis, thank you. You are all right. I guess I'm going to have to make a special post for you. Travis says, thank you for the 99, by the way. The most well-known leaders of Project Liberal and the CLC are rarely seen in their state affiliates. How does he plan to engineer a takeover? I did think you did say you were not planning a takeover. Or
no, I don't. I'm not planning. No. Yeah, I'm not planning to run. I'm not endorsing a chair, vice chair candidate. I'm not trying to take over. What I'm saying with Project Liberal, and I think that's a mischaracterization, because I talked to the people in CLC and Project Liberal. I mean, I was at a Nashville meeting like last month. I've been to every state convention. I was a state chair, so I'm not sure where that comes from. But a whole nother conversation. We are not trying to take over the Libertarian Party. That's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is say the Libertarian Party needs to adopt some very basic requirements in order to make it a home for classical liberals. I don't, as I said, hate myself enough to want to run the LNC. What I want to do is I want to make it a place that I could tell my mom to go check out, right? And if they're unwilling to disaffiliate the people that are spreading anti-Semitism and anti-LGBT, like, I can't in good faith do that. Many classical liberals say, I don't want to open my wallet to an organization like that. So it's not a takeover. It's like, hey, let's do the basics. Like, let's operate a party that people want to associate with. If we do that, then great. If we don't do that, then we need to find some alternatives so that these people that really want to see classical liberal values implemented can go do something with that money, time, and effort, because they want to give it. The LP just doesn't seem to want to take it right now.
So let me talk to my audience real fast. Again, guys, if you want to see what Josh is doing, head over to projectliberal.org. All of his stuff is actually in the description on both YouTube and on Facebook if you want to see what he's doing. If you like what we're talking about, do me a favor, click the like button. It does matter. I bug you all the time, so do it. Click it, subscribe, click the like button. It does matter. It's how I get past Al Gore, the algorithms. It's how I get past them. And if you're watching on Twitter, please retweet it. Just retweet. Click or repost, whatever, re-exit, whatever is the thing you do now. I don't know what you do. Whatever that, do that thing. Whatever that thing is, please do that thing. It really does matter. The Lunatic Libertarian says, thank you for the 99, appreciate it. We don't need a hero. We need an army of boots on the ground. Use the other party dollars by showing up at their events and get the emotional people focused solutions with end goals. I will make a minor shift on that one. And I've said this before many times. Many people think we need a savior, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need, you know, Justin Amash is going to come in on his white horse and save everything, or Ron Paul's going to come out of retirement and save us all, or whatever, right? And what I've said, similar to what you're saying, I've said we don't need a savior. We need hundreds and hundreds of local heroes.
Yeah.
Right? If we have hundreds of local heroes, I think that's the critical piece. We won't require a savior. If we get one, awesome, he'll come or she will come from one of those hundreds of local heroes if we require one. But I don't think we require one. I agree with you completely. What do you think? And, is he right on this one or what?
No. I mean, I think you're dead on. I mean, Rainwater doesn't get 14% if he's just one guy, right? There needs to be a community. There needs to be a grassroots effort. It's the same thing with any party. I mean, if you're not able to build a grassroots momentum, then it kind of points to the fact that you may not have signal on what you're selling. Like if no one is showing up at the local level to fight for it. Again, going back to Gary, one of the most powerful things, I remember this because I was a state or a county chair during Gary Johnson's 2016 campaign, was I just had random people showing up into our meetings, right? Not only from Gary's messaging, but from the fact the party was just kind of a talking point. These people stuck around and built the party with me for years after that. Those people are still in many cases highly involved. And those people that came out of that campaign are the ones that kept the Libertarian Party going. In many cases, we're currently, the Libertarian Party of Tennessee is suing the state of Tennessee for their crazy ballot access laws. That kind of stuff would not happen without this like long-term momentum with a really core activist base that was turned out from those major presidential races. But yeah, no, I mean, if you're showing up nationally and you're saying something and no one's showing up and no one really cares, then you probably need to refine your messaging. So
yeah, I think that's probably true, right? Joe brings up Ricky Harrington.
Love Ricky.
And I think that's a great, right? That's a great point. Ricky Harrington, also great. Also in Florida, Jim Turney.
Love Jim Turney.
Elections.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of them. Patty brings up and she says, Larry, I've told you before, I get told libertarians are close to Nazis by the left. I do hear that. That's why I talk to the left many times. Many people I talk to the left. In fact, Spike teases me, calls me the communist whisperer. She says, but when I bring you up, I'm told you're not a real libertarian. How do we change that? I'm not sure we need to, Patty. And the point is, I think there is some value to seeing individuals as special, right? So if Larry's one of the good ones in New York and Josh is one of the good ones in Tennessee, I don't care. That's the local heroes, right, that I'm talking about. If Joe is one of the good ones in Florida, I don't mind. I mean, that's where I am. If I have some Larrytarians versus libertarians, it's fine as long as I can bring them in and then they start seeing the change I'm actually okay with that. I hope they're just following me. I know. Tell me if I'm off here, Josh.
No, I would like to add to that. So I've heard the same thing from the left for virtually the entire time I've been an activist. And that inherently is one of the reasons why I feel we have to be so intentional on purging and disassociating ourselves from bigots and far, radical extremists, especially on the right, but also on the left. The problem with the left is we don't have nearly as many people on the left trying to take over the Libertarian Party. I mean, there's some little bit wacky libertarian socialists, banana octopus people, you know what I mean? But like, we do have a problem where there are people on the far right that see us as adjacent. I think MAGA's made that worse because MAGA uses words like liberty and freedom, but they don't really know what those words mean. So I actually think that as a party and as an organization, that's actually a reason why we have to be intentional to push away those people and say, we are not, you are not us, you reject our values. And that goes back to the conversation we had at the beginning. It's one of the reasons why we started Project Liberals, because we see those things need to be separated. We need to draw a strong red line. And then it makes it easier for people to have conversations about your campaign, for example, because if you're running for governor and you go, the Libertarian Party, yeah, sure, there was this crazy Nazi guy that ran a state affiliate and we told him to get the hell out of here. It's a lot easier for you to go win those votes than if they look up the Twitter and they still see this stuff going out. And so, yeah, I mean, that is a whole, we could talk about that one for a while, but yeah.
But Shelley says, Larry Sharpe brought me to the party. Spike Cohen gives me hope. The LNC doesn't seek ballot access, which essentially pits themselves against us. Ooh, interesting way of thinking about that. Yeah. I mean, the idea that, we get hope, which again, I like, right? Mm-hmm. We do get help. But then if the LNC is not going for ballot access, to your point, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. We could be an activist group, but I mean, Spike started a great activist group with You Are the Power. He's doing that real life activism. And guess what? He's having more success with You Are the Power than he ever would have if he was trying to run this thing through the complex of a political national committee. Like structurally, it's just better suited for that. So leave the activism for the separate orgs.
Well, Legacy Zach says, you cannot be principled in a dirty game of unrelenting politics. It is hard. I agree, Zach. You're right. It's difficult. How does one subvert statism to what is undoubtedly a tool of state? Here is my view on this, Zach, and people disagree with me, but here's my view. My view is the average person, the average American, sees the political arena as valid and real. That's how they see it. So if we can get into that arena and then say and show them as another way, I think that's how you actually change the culture. And when you change the culture, that is how you change the state. That's my view. People disagree, but I think electoral politics is not the be all end all. It's one part of the movement, right? It's the part that I prefer. I think I'm good at running. I like being in front of people. So that's where I stay. But Zach, it's not the only part of the movement. There are many other ways you can move liberty forward. This is just one way. The reason why I do is I think if I can get there, the fact that I got on Joe Rogan wasn't because I'm a smart and attractive man. I mean, I am attractive, but that isn't the reason why. It was because I was running for governor, right? That got me to that level. So I used running for office and I used the tool of the state, as you say, to try to help to change culture. I don't know, Josh, what do you think?
No, I mean, you can have a national campaign, for example, like Gary Johnson, that got me excited to show up. Those things echo out for generations. Ron Paul's 2012 campaign changed the lives of so many young people. That's electoral politics. Sure, he didn't win, but I tell you right now that there were thousands of organizations that were spun out of that because they understood the ideas that he was articulating. The first step, though, and this is why the Libertarian Party or really any viable third party is so important, is you have to give people a viable choice. You have to have somebody on the ballot in 50 states, or you have to have somebody that can win the presidency, or somebody, because otherwise we're talking about some guy on Twitter that has a bunch of strong opinions. If it's an actual path, it's a psychological trigger in people's mind. Yes. That energy can resonate for generations, and you don't even know. I mean, I don't think many people understand the true impact of Ron Paul's campaign in 2012 and 2008 until now. And I think the same thing will be said about Gary. I know many activists that it changed their life, and they're completely doing different things than what they expected. I mean, I know I am one of them. So
there we go. Well. So before we wrap this up, anything else I should be talking about or saying, Josh?
No, I appreciate you letting me come on. I know that this is like, again, a bunch of inter-party nonsense, so maybe a little niche, but hopefully we had some good
It is a bit.
conversations. If anyone thinks I'm off base, they're welcome to shoot me a tweet or whatever, DM. I'm happy to maybe correct the record if I said something incorrectly. I will just do my shameless plug if you're okay with that, Larry.
Please.
Okay. So you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Eakle. You could go to projectliberal.org to learn more about what our PAC is. We are not, as I said, there to take over the LP, but to make it a home for classical liberals. If you scroll down the page, you'll see a link to Operation Phoenix, which has the list of our demands, basically the things that we want to see the LP adopt in order for us to take the money from Project Liberal PAC and use it to support LNC candidates. If you're interested in helping, we'd love your support, a volunteer donation, whatever that might be. But again, Larry, thank you for making time for me.
Absolutely. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please click that like button. Please, again, as I keep telling you, please retweet it so more people can see that it does matter. I appreciate all the super chats. If you want to support the show directly, you can. Patreon.com/Sharpway. $10 a month goes a long way. I can spend less time consulting and more time doing this. If you want to support my crazy attempt at ballot access in New York State, you may. LarrySharp.com/ballot-access. All the links are on YouTube and also in the Facebook show description. Josh, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. I will not be on tomorrow. I will be crazy busy tomorrow, but I will be on Thursday night again with the man himself, the author, Michael Leibowitz, who spent 2 decades in prison and is now out as a libertarian crusader. I will see you all very soon.